All right, guys, y'all ready for me to get started? Chad, you ready for me to get started?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I'm Etienne de la Boissy, the founder of the ArtOfLiberty Foundation and the author of the book Government, the Biggest Scam in History Exposed. And the thesis of my book is that government is illegitimate. It is best thought of as a technique to rob and control populations. And they get away with it because the government is in league with the media and academia. And so on the academia side, it's the mandatory government school that teaches you that government is legitimate, desirable, and necessary before you're old enough to really evaluate the logic and the morality of that claim. And on the media side, there is a monopoly media system of 6 monopoly media corporations running hundreds and hundreds of subsidiaries on the old media side: radio, print, television, stations, cable. On the new media side, there's 3 to 4 dozen new media internet companies, search engines, social media, Wikipedia, Google, Discuss, the comment engine that does comments on thousands of websites, Amazon Prime, Netflix, Snopes, and other associated sites that are censoring information algorithmically. And so that system, that algorithmic censorship of the internet plus the monopoly media system, means it's almost impossible to reach a large amount of people to get a consistent message out on a consistent basis unless you have kind of unlimited dollars, which the Liberty Movement doesn't. And so in my previous life, I used to be a productivity expert for Fortune 500 companies. And so I would put on my productivity expert hat, and I'd say, hey, how can we accelerate the goals of the Free State Project? And so I came up with something that we call the Pre-State Project. And the Pre-State Project. And in New Hampshire, a pre-stater is someone, your pre-stater, excellent, that supports the liberty goals of the Free State Project, but didn't necessarily move here because they already live here. And so my thesis with the Pre-State Project is, how can we, focus and accelerate reaching the libertarian leaning in the state, and expose the illegitimacy and criminality of government in a way that cannot be censored, that gets around this algorithmic censorship of the internet and the monopoly of the media. And so the way that I think that can be done is by just going door to door, which you can do in a small state.
And arresting people.
Huh?
And arresting people.
No, not necessarily arresting them.
We'll get the message across.
Well. First, we start with just educating them, and so I mean, the main education is that most people have been raised their entire life to believe that government is legitimate, that you just have to vote harder if you want social or socioeconomic change.
That is the problem. We just all voted harder.
If we just all vote harder. And so what my idea is to widely expose it by dropping copies of Government, the Biggest Scam in History, our 64 gigabyte flash drive with all the evidence to back up the book, and a to be determined documentary door to door in a campaign that can't be censored at all, that achieves something called the 100th monkey effect, which is the idea that people come to kind of a group consensus very, very rapidly when they're all talking and focused on the same thing at the same time. And so I did, kind of the math, and so there's, roughly 1.3 and change million people in New Hampshire, 800,000 of whom are voters. And so if you were to target the influential in the state using kind of modern demographic, marketing techniques, buying the right lists of journalists, influencers, bloggers, vloggers, entrepreneurs, business executives, the professoriate, the teachers, the people that have the ability to influence others, all right? Those are kind of the 10 to 15% of the population that you have to win, because you don't have to, for social change, you don't have to win everybody. You've just got to really reach this 10 to 15% of the population that either are the natural leaders or are in a position to positively influence others, and they drag the rest of society. Okay, and so if you can target that group and then fill in with the parents of high school seniors, all right? So if you drop 100,000 copies of, 100,000 packages, we'll say, and by the way, it doesn't have to be my book. I believe that my book is the most effective in waking people up. And if somebody had a different book and a different flash drive full of resources that was more effective, then I would say do it too. But like, the key thing is to get around the censorship, the algorithmic censorship of the internet and the monopolization of the media, going direct, okay, in the good sense, not the BlackRock sense, but like going direct makes a lot of sense. Because it's impossible to censor, and you're getting everybody on that block talking about the legitimacy of government in a way that's never happened before. And so I did the math, and kind of the basics of the idea are that we would target 12 different communities in New Hampshire, all right? And in those specific cities and communities, and so, some of them are obvious. It's Portsmouth, Manchester, Concord, Nashua, Ware, go on down the list. We kind of roll through the state, community by community. We hit all of the different the homes that we've targeted in the area using these modern marketing demographic techniques. They get a letter, they get a little box that has the book, the flash drive, and the documentary, and a letter explaining, hey, we're having to communicate with you in this way because there's been an organized crime system that's been controlling the information that you receive through this monopoly media system. We're giving you this book that explains the basics, and we're giving you a flash drive full of information backing up all of the claims that we're making. And here's a documentary as well, because some people like documentaries, some people like reading, so we're hitting all the ways that people learn. And we're having a town hall meeting a week and a half from now, and here are 4 tickets, and there's literally 4 Ticketmaster looking tickets in the box, okay, for an event that is scheduled a week and a half ahead of the drop. And so now you drive people to an in-person town hall meeting where the first part of the day we have 3 speakers, one of whom's focused on the illegitimacy of government, one of whom's focused on the criminality of government, one of whom's focused on what's going on in New Hampshire with the Free State Project and the Liberty Movement and the Liberty organizations that are here. And then once those speeches are done, we turn the crowd, the assembled crowd, loose on tables of all of the major liberty organizations in the state. From the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance to the Children's Scholarship Fund to the Libertarian Party to the Republican Liberty Caucus, to every organization in the state that is focused on liberty issues. We're going to introduce the people to those, and then we're going to pack it up and we're going to go on to the next event in the next city. And so the final thing that I wanted to say is we're going to we're going to move those people that come out and have demonstrated that they're interested and willing to take action. We're going to move them to a to-be-determined, encrypted, censorship-proof communications platform, so we can continue to communicate with them. But we're going to then roll on to the next city, and we're going to do the exact same thing, driving people to a town hall meeting where we answer all their questions, introduce them to the liberty groups, and then just keep rolling through the state. And so for about $1 million, you could drop 100,000 copies of the book, 100,000 flash drives, 100,000 DVDs, and you could do town hall meetings in every single city for about $1 million. Now, that's not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things, especially, my thesis is we can win liberty everywhere, but we've got to win it somewhere first. And so I believe that there's a global movement that would support freeing one particular U.S. state. And so that's one of the things that I've been trying to popularize is if you want to have liberty in China, let's win New Hampshire first. You want to have liberty in California, let's win New Hampshire first. You want to have liberty in Israel, let's free New Hampshire first. Russia, you name it. And so to create a laboratory of liberty and prove that you can have peace, harmony, and abundance without government, well, I think there's a global audience that would be interested in the exact same thing. So the idea, fixes the problem of gets around the censorship. It's impossible to censor. Okay, you reach real people. It accelerates the goals of the Free State Project, and it's relatively low cost for a really, really big payday. I think if we did that, you spend $1 million right off the bat, you get back probably at a minimum $5 to $10 million in what's called earned media. And earned media is like, hey, do you know what's going on in New Hampshire? Hey, some guys dropping $1 million. They're dropping 1 million books. They say the government's illegitimate. And so for that $1 million, you're hitting the parents of high school seniors, you're hitting 300,000 voters in a voting population of 800,000. So a huge, huge block of pro-liberty voters in one single sweep. And so that's kind of the basics of the idea. I think it's going to cost about $150,000 to test it in one community in New Hampshire. And so my organization, the ArtOfLiberty Foundation, we're a startup. In 2021 and 2022, we raised $150,000 seed round funding. That got the 5th edition of the book out. That got us communicating on every major platform to try and get around the censorship. We've got a core team that's already in place. We're now in the market to raise a $500,000 seed round to open a full-scale, essentially mini think tank in New Hampshire to pursue the ideas of liberty, and we're looking for $150,000 to test the pre-state project within the state. So that gives you kind of an idea of how we're doing it and what we're doing. We just brought on a vice president of development to help us raise the money. We just hired a marketing firm to help us raise the money. We've already kicked off the pre-state project in New Hampshire. So when we came up for the Liberty Forum, we began giving copies of the book and flash drives to legislatures, free copies to Liberty representatives. We began giving free copies to libraries. We began giving free copies to police chiefs. We began getting the idea of the illegitimacy and the criminality of government out in New Hampshire, and we're going to continue to do that. We now have an option on the website where people can donate copies of the book and the flash drive to New Hampshire, where we're putting them in the hands of either libertarian-leaning representatives or journalists, or we're also going after the opposition. So we've sent it to Granite State Progress has gotten a copy of the book. Xander Rice Hawkins has gotten a copy. Brody Shays has gotten a copy.
What's the rationale for that?
Because I try and think that everybody's I try and give everybody the benefit of the doubt. Some people are misguided, and so maybe this book does a really good job of waking people up to the scam of the system, and so maybe we can wake up some of the critics into how the scam of the system works. And so those are really that's the basics of the idea. That's the basics of where we're at as an organization. And now I wanted to kind of kick it around with you guys. So the final thing I'll say is that we're looking for pre-staters in New Hampshire to really take the lead on this. And the reason for pre-staters is, one of the criticisms that the FSP occasionally gets is that libertarian carpetbaggers, you got it right. And so I want to have a little fun race with the FSP to see which one of us can get to 20,000 first. Competition. And so I think that you can get 20,000, you can locate and activate 20,000 libertarian leaning in the state faster than you can get 20,000 to move there. Now, I'm not taking anything away from the FSP, because the only reason that this would be successful is because of the groundwork that the FSP has already laid. And so those liberty organizations that we could take the liberty interested and direct them towards, they only exist because of the work that has come before. So I'm not criticizing. This is not a criticism of the FSP. This is a value add to the FSP. This is a way of accelerating the liberty goals of the FSP. This is a complementary to the FSP. It's not a replacement to the FSP. It's a big ass job. Let's split it in half. You focus on getting the people to move to New Hampshire. The Pre-State Project focuses on getting people that are already in the state woke up, activated, and pointed in the right direction. And so really that's kind of what it's all about. And now I'll open the floor to any questions.
This reminds me. Go ahead.
When you're sending out these books and the packets of the tickets and everything, are you targeting just the influencers in that town, or is it a general invitation to people in that town to come to the platform?
So it's the core group is the influencers. So we're going after kind of the intelligentsia, business executives, entrepreneurs, the professoriate, teachers, bloggers, vloggers, traditional print, radio journalists, television. But that's only kind of a small, let's say that's 10 to 15% of the people that we want to target. And so everybody else, we're just going to use, we're going to buy lists and target the parents of high school seniors, because you get 3 voters in a single household. And so now that's how you get to, you drop 100,000 and you reach $250,000 to 300,000 for $1 million in a way that cannot be censored.
So you start with the influencers and then add on the...
You fill in with parents of high school and seniors in the right targeted, demographic neighborhoods, and you target the right neighborhoods, you target the right, the right people. We're going for a high-end crowd of people that read, and that are, politically active. So you go after certain neighborhoods over others, but that can all be done easily with modern, demographic marketing techniques.
This reminds me of the John Birch Society. I got involved when I was 16, 30 years ago. And
me too.
Yep, that's it. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So you got that demographic, right? To get those. Wow. And they had the 110.6 program. Yep.
Well, they did almost the same thing. They did it with the book None Dare Call It Treason.
Yeah.
And so the book None Dare Call It Treason, which was for back then was the most effective book for waking people up to the scam of communism and how communism was being used to try and move the politics and move the politics of the United States towards socialism and towards a more captive government-controlled, economy and population. And so that was the most effective book. They distributed somewhere around 8 million copies of that back then. And so what I'm saying is I believe that I have the most effective book for it today. But if it wasn't, if somebody was to say, hey, look, this book is more effective, then I would say, it's not that it's my book. It's just that it's the idea is how do you cost effectively get around the censorship of the monopoly media and the algorithmic censorship of the internet. You've got to go door to door. It's the most cost effective way. It's the one way that cannot be censored. And so what I'm willing to do is if somebody comes up and says that they think they have another book, I've got a kind of way to test it, and I call it the 100 flagpole test. And I'll bet you if I drop my book versus any other liberty-oriented book to 100 households that have flagpoles with the American flag up, I bet you I can get more people to take it down than the other book. Okay.
Upside down count?
Or upside down, or provide them with an alternative flag, or whatever it is. And so that's the bet and the test that I'm willing to make. And so the idea is that once you realize the American flag is being used as an artificially indoctrinated holy symbol, that they're weaving it into television programs, product placing it, using techniques like anchoring, when you realize, hey, they're running unethically manipulative tricks on you to get you attached to that flag and being being an American and supporting the government, right or wrong. Once you realize that they're tricking you into that, most people, nobody likes to be a chump. And so most people are like, oh, okay, now I get it, and I'm out. And so I think that my book does a better job of exposing the unethically manipulative tricks and techniques that the government is using on the population than any others. But I'm not wedded to it. What I'm wedded to is the idea of getting around, cost-effectively getting around the algorithmic censorship of the internet and the monopolization of the media in a cost-effective way that allows us to reach 300,000 people in New Hampshire in one fell swoop, in something in a way that's nothing, that's never been done before. So
it seems like you thought this out very well. This is clearly a well-planned approach that you're taking. But there's a nit. You say that going door to door is one avenue in which they can censor. New Hampshire law does allow municipalities to require peddlers' licenses for door-to-door sales and solicitation of the sort that you're talking about. Do you think it's possible that these 12 municipalities could inoculate themselves to this effort by requiring peddlers' licenses for their teams going out?
So we're not selling anything, so technically we wouldn't be peddlers.
Okay.
I thought about mailing them, and actually when I originally did the calculations on what you could do for $1 million as like a nice round number, I actually figured out what it would cost to mail it. But then the problem is that we get censored by the U.S. Postal Service where they're not delivering a lot of our mail. We have boxes of books that arrive busted open. We have boxes of you wouldn't believe. I've got pictures and I've documented all of it. We have books that arrive. This is a trip to me. There's actually a mailing envelope that the Postal Service has, okay, where they cut out the address label that was on your box. They cut out the address label on your box and they put it in a pre-printed envelope that has a clear plastic front, so that the return address of what was on your box is visible through the thing, and the envelope is pre-printed and says, "We lost all the other contents. This is the only thing that's left. Sorry about that. There's nothing you can do about it." And so we actually get back these little envelopes that have the actual label from the box that we mailed out, all right? And the only thing that we got back was the label.
Wow.
So you can't trust the Postal Service.
Oh, I know
and
that.
so in the process of learning that, I'm like, okay, what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have trusted members of the FSP or the PSP drive, okay, trusted people that we can trust 100% drive and physically hand deliver these to be able to get around the censorship of the Postal Service, in addition to the censorship. And by the way, they did that during the ratification debates of the Constitution. The Anti-Federalists were censored in the exact same way. They were censored through the mail, and so Anti-Federalist mailing pamphlets were censored out of the mail during the ratification debates. So it's a known issue that the organized crime system has used before, going back to the quote unquote founding of the country.
I had somebody knock on my
Yeah, go ahead.
I had somebody knock on my door like a couple weeks ago, advertising pest services. It was like 3 o'clock. He had no literature, and then I told my wife, I'm like, who knocks on doors anymore? And so she texted all her friends in the neighborhood. We're like, oh yeah, it turns out he was in a Segway on this like windy dirt road, and it's like, does anyone still knock on doors? I mean, Jehovah's Witnesses, I haven't seen them since the pandemic. But,
Yeah. So we could have door knockers too, but the beauty of this is all you got to do is leave this package, and then it does everything else.
I thought it was odd that guy had no literature to leave.
Yeah.
To look at, not even the card. I'm like,
We got some of that. So
yeah.
you had a question?
So are you willing to give free copies for people to drive around?
Oh yeah. I'm not expecting to make any money off of the sale of the books. Everything would be done at cost, 100% cost. I just want to widely expose the illegitimacy and criminality of government in a way that cannot be censored at all.
You mean, but so it costs I pay you $20 a book and then I.
No. So So whatever discounts that we get for printing 100,000 copies of the book, that would be, and I made it like an assumption, I think we can actually get it down by doing it in a kind of like a magazine format to like $3 or $4. And so like I think we can get it down in a kind of different format than the existing book, and do the flash drive, the book, and a DVD, 100,000 copies plus town hall meetings for $1 million. And I think I can test it for $150,000. But everything would be done at cost. I wouldn't be making any money off of the books at all. I don't anticipate, charging a nickel over what it cost me to do.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So when this all kicks off, how do people acquire the books?
So, we just drop them. So as soon as we can get it funded and we can, do a test, the test would hit X amount of people in a single town. We would drive people to a town hall meeting, and we would see if we drop, let's say we drop 15,000 books, how many people are we able to get? And so if we're able to get 10% of that, if we're able to get 150 people, then that's a grand slam home run. I think if we're able to to turn out 10% of the people, then if we hit 1 million people, then we're going to hit 100,000 people, in the whole, or sorry, if we hit 300,000 people, we're going to get 30,000 that come out. And then out of that 30,000, we're going to turn, what percentage of those do we turn into, doing some kind of activism to getting onto the kind of the general liberty movement in some kind of way. And so I think that's, that would, if we could get 10%, but testing it in a single community, that would also pay for all the journalists in the state. So in the 150K test, we would hit all of the journalists, all of the bloggers, vloggers. We'd kind of get them on board, and we'd be, begin the process of doing the raise. We'd already be in the raise for the whole million. And so we've now proven the concept, and we now know how many people we can expect to come out to these town hall meetings. And so I think it can be significant. And so it's 150K to test, $1 million to hit 300,000 people in New Hampshire.
Have you built these kits yet? You have the book. Do you have the video and the?
So I have the Liberator flash drive, which is like a credit card size flash drive that backs up everything on the book. I don't know if you've seen it. I'll just go ahead and pass one around. But does anybody have a Liberator on them?
There's one right there.
Can you grab it for me?
I've seen the COVID Liberator. I haven't seen this one.
Oh, I'll show you.
The Liberator gun?
So these packages are kind of like a trail to lead people to the meetings.
Yeah. So it just drives people, and it's got a short letter that gives an overview of the issue. It's a control perception operation. They've been controlling the information that you've been receiving, and you're not getting the whole story about the legitimacy, the necessity, and the desirability of having a government. And so unique approach, never been done before, but solves all of the kind of key issues that are against us, the monopolization of the media and the algorithmic censorship of the internet.
And once you've got people's attention and built enthusiasm.
There it is.
It folds out just like that on the side there.
Oh wow, it's actually like a business card. That's great.
It is, yeah. So
the process of extracting the people from the system, does that become education around sovereign law? What approach do you take? There's the secessionists, but then it seems, as I start to understand it, the more effective way is just to sort of disappear into the bushes, stand in your power, and not necessarily invite conflict via the threat of violence and coercion from the federal government.
Mike had an excellent question. Mike's question is what's the ultimate goal? What do you want people to do? And so I think that there's actually two primary goals. Number one is peaceful civil complete peaceful civil disobedience to government authority and power within the state, to where when the shave-headed cult members in uniforms show up, that essentially now the population understands the unethically manipulative techniques that have been used on them that lead them to use violence on peaceful people for politicians. So now we're exposing not just the illegitimacy of government, but the fact that the police have been unethically, manipulatively trained to ignore their morality and use violence on peaceful people for politicians. And so, that doesn't fly when a large enough group surrounds them and points out the immorality of what they do. And I think you saw that when the tax collectors showed up here at Porcupine Freedom Festival in 2015. They were made fun of, they were mocked, and they've never been back since. Okay, they've never been back here since because they're not used to it, encountering dozens or hundreds of people that are calling them out for the immorality and the illegitimacy of what they're doing. And so that's what I think we can achieve, is that we can widely expose the unethically manipulative techniques that have been used on the police to create order followers that will use violence on peaceful people. And so goal number one is just, we're not going along with anything the government says. We're not going along with any more lockdowns. We're not going along with any more mask mandates. We're not going along with any more victimless crimes. We're not going along with any of the thing. We're not paying our taxes. We're not withholding taxes from our employees anymore. And so begin to organize the business owners within the state. And then finally, the second goal is a peaceful and orderly dissolution of the government. So a kind of statewide consensus that we now begin rolling back government and privatizing everything that can be privatized in a program that would turn New Hampshire into a laboratory of liberty. So what we want to do here in New Hampshire is test, how do you privatize government in other states? How do you roll back what is now state services into private charities, mutual aid societies, co-ops, homeowners associations, fire, insurance company provided fire brigades, whatever it is. We begin using New Hampshire as a test bed of how do you privatize government, how do you roll it back, and then really there's three goals. And so the first goal, the first goal is widespread, peaceful civil disobedience. The second goal is beginning to achieve a consensus on rolling back and privatizing government to just protecting life, liberty, and property as an interim step to no government at all. And then finally, it is a peaceful and secession from the corporate United States and the United States, so that New Hampshire is a independent Hong Kong type libertarian mecca from around the world with no taxation, the same liberty advantage that New Hampshire now enjoys among all of these other high-tech states. New Hampshire continues to enjoy that liberty advantage as the only libertarian, voluntarist, tax-free place on the planet.
Yeah.
And so think about what that would do to the Free State Project.
So it's mass education followed by mass noncompliance.
Mass education followed by mass noncompliance. Exactly. Thank you.
The whole sovereign law element becomes almost
I think there's all of these experiments, and so now people are starting to vote with their feet. Some of them are voting for Liberland. It depends on where you live, but this is how it's going to be. One place is going to win it first. We got the Army here. This is the easiest place to win it. There's no other place that has an army the way that we have an army here. Go ahead.
I looked through a good chunk of the book, and one thing I want to ask you about, because I disagree with it. I think there's this idea that it's immoral to have an implicit social contract where you're kind of living in an area, and just because you're in that geographical area, you have to abide by these laws, or because your kids. When you have kids, they also are in that area, and so they're under those jurisdictions, whatever. And you say that's immoral, right? I don't think it's immoral because it might lead to the consequences. Right. So I just want to hear what you think about that. Is there different ethical systems that might make this some degree of government actually okay?
So I don't think there's no way to have a legitimate moral government You cannot have it. It's absolutely impossible to have a legitimate, moral, logical government. If we're on an island, all of us are trapped on an island. There's no way that us 6 vote that you 4 do all the work. Okay, like there's no way we can't vote that you've got to give us your resources because we outnumber you. And so it doesn't matter if there's 10 of us or 100 of us or 200.
Stealing.
Right.
And there's limits. There's some. If there's a set of Bill of Rights, which there is here, assuming there is, and if that was enforced, then that example wouldn't work.
The Bill of Rights in a free society is do no harm to others. Natural law codifies it into 5 more, like 5 to 7 specific transgressions. You can't steal, you can't rape, you can't. But all of that boils down to do no harm. Okay, and as long as you're not harming anybody else, you have the right to do anything that you want to do as long as you're not harming anybody else. Everybody has the same rights. Nobody has rights that other people don't. And so everything has to be a negotiated agreement between people, and that's what I think you would see society flourish. And so that's what we want to prove, is that you can have governance without government.
Yeah, I think you could be correct that that world would be better than ours, but I hold a probabilistic sort of worldview where that could be correct, but it also could be correct that implicit social contracts, maybe because of like the free rider problem in some cases, or because of the public goods issue in some cases, can be superior. I'm not going to be. My perspective is probabilistic.
Yeah.
To see both possibly working.
Thank you so much.
So the way I look at it is a voluntary society is not utopian in the sense that you're saying that we're going to fix every problem. What you're saying is that you can achieve an outcome that's better than the existing system without the violence and the extortion and the illogical nature of the existing system. It's not fair that the banks get to create money out of thin air when other businesses don't get to do that. It's not fair that it's not fair that they're able to have currency that produces inflation in everybody else's currency and benefits private companies at the expense of everybody else. And so a lot of those things would go away in a voluntary society, and then the economic activity, the wealth that would create would solve a lot of societal issues. Just because it's not this artificial scarcity of the existing economy. I mean, I look at the inflation that they're doing as a kind of economic warfare against the population, where they're using inflation, confiscatory taxation, estate taxes, property taxes, and other taxation to keep everybody poor, so that you don't have the resources to educate your kids the way that you want them to be educated. You're forced to depend on the quote unquote free indoctrination system.
Too, I just view it as like this. All the politicians have this vested interest to get reelected, and so they just push the can down the road. That's how I see it.
Right.
We're going to increase the funding of XYZ agency, and that will help us get reelected in our state, whatever. And so I view it as just kind of negligence, but it's still evil.
But to your question about the social contract, one of the elements of a valid contract is that the contract has to be voluntary. So if I put a gun to your head and I say, here, sign this contract, that's not a valid contract because it's not voluntarily executed by you. The problem with the social contract is that the social contract is not voluntary. You're basically born into it, and you're subject to it without ever agreeing to it. So it's not a valid contract in that sense.